check out the odds. In terms of their notable offseason moves, talk about the trade for Devonta Adams. They also signed defensive end Chandler Jones. Max Crosby agreeing to a 4-year, $94 million extension. Another big move for them, but they did lose Yannick Ngakoue to a free agency and a third-round pick that they picked up, Dylan Parham, and the 90th pick in this year's NFL draft. All right, so let's discuss what these moves could mean for the Raiders as they get to it under new head coach Josh McDaniels. Ryan Wilson here. And Ryan, a lot of people predicting them to follow last year's 10-7 record with another double-digit campaign. One thing they certainly have done this offseason is they've bought into Derek Carr. Is it time for all of us to buy into him too?
Yeah, we were talking about this during the break, Jeremy. I'm a huge Derek Carr supporter, and you seem a little lukewarm. You seem to be of the Will Brinson school of thought on Derek Carr, the host of the old Pick Six podcast there. He feels like Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins are the same person. If you look at the stats, they're actually pretty similar. If you watch them play, I think if it's the game's on the line, final drive, fourth quarter, I think most folks would agree they'd rather have Derek Carr out there slinging it than Kirk Cousins. And no disrespect to Cousins, that's just the reality of watching them play. And I think things, you have to understand, how did things work out last year for the Raiders? You mentioned that double-digit win, but they did it amidst a ton of chaos, starting with their head coach who resigned midway through the year because of some comments and some emails that were unearthed. Henry Ruggs found himself in trouble with the law after an accident that ended up killing another person. And through it all, Derek Carr remained the leader of that team, and that team seemed to rally around him. I think the issue with Derek Carr sometimes is that he may seem disingenuous when he talks to the media, but when you talk to folks close to him and people who have covered him, they say he's 100% genuine, and you get that from his teammates. And that's perhaps the most important and probably the best thing you can say about a football player, if his teammates believe in him and buy in as a leader. And that seems to be the case in Las Vegas as they head into year two with a new coach in Josh McDaniels, who's making his second stint as a head coach. Would have been his third if that Colts thing, he didn't back out of that a few years ago. But here we are. It feels like Josh McDaniels has learned from previous lessons. And I think this is best case scenario for both Josh McDaniels, Derek Carr, and the Raiders.
I mean, there's been thoughts that Carr could be out with the Raiders for a number of seasons now. But Gruden bought into him. Now McDaniels has bought into him. I mean, maybe it's a great point. Maybe it's time for the rest of us to maybe take a closer look at him. In terms of McDaniels, I mean, great run under Bill Belichick in New England. Not a great run as a head coach in Denver. What has he learned from past mistakes that could allow him to find success in Vegas?
Yeah, Josh actually talked about this when he was hired earlier this year with the Raiders. He said, look, I know football. I knew a little bit of football when I got to Denver. I didn't know how to relate to people. And it was sort of my way or the highway. Once he got there, he was a young head coach at the time. He's certainly older now in his late 40s. And people weren't buying in. He got there. He wanted to get rid of Jay Cutler, wanted to bring in Matt Castle from New England. That fell through. He ended up getting the quarterback from Chicago and sent Jay Cutler that way. And things worked well for about 6 weeks. I think at one point they may have been 8-0 or close to that, and then the wheels came off. And the wheels came off in dramatic fashion to the point that by the middle of next season, McDaniels was out of a job. So he leans on that and says, look, I learned a lot. Not so much about the football part of it, but about relating to people as human beings and understanding that there's more than just my way and that's it. And I think that's what he's grown, how he's grown as a person, and I think that's going to play itself out over the course of this season. I think having veteran leaders like Derek Carr help. Obviously, Jay Cutler didn't work out in Denver. Those two people, McDaniels and Cutler, were never on the same page. Devonta Adams is a veteran who they acquired. That also makes life a little bit easier. And on the other side of the ball, you have Max Crosby, who just signed that big deal you mentioned, Jeremy. And I think now that Josh can focus on the football and not worry about the ancillary human relations stuff, even though it sounds like he's learned his lesson and he can allow his leaders in the locker room to handle some of that stuff while he focuses on trying to beat three of the other really good football teams in that division.
Another guy that people may have to wait a little bit to buy into, Josh McDaniels, and see how he does with the Raiders. Well, Devonta Adams, I mean, we know what he's capable of, one of the best in the business. It was expected he was going to stay in Green Bay with A-Rod. Instead, I mean, I'm going to say that he downgraded from Rodgers to Carr, Ryan. I know you might disagree with me, but with that in mind, I mean, what's your outlook for Devonta Adams as he heads into this season with Derek Carr as his quarterback and not the future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers?
Now, look, I love Derek Carr, but I'm not going to disagree that it was a downgrade. Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Derek Carr is a really good football player. But I think it does say something that Devonta Adams understood that Aaron Rodgers was going to come back, and he still said, you know what? Yeah, I want to go to Las Vegas to be reunited with my college quarterback. So what is he going to do? I'm going to ask you a question, Jeremy. I'm going to turn the tables on you here. I'm predicting that Devonta Adams has 131 catches for 1,719 yards and 24 touchdowns. Does that mean anything to you, those numbers?
Those numbers, no, I mean, that would be a record season, I would think, one of the best all time.
Those were Devonta Adams' numbers in 2013 at Fresno State, right before he left for the draft as a second-round pick, with Derek Carr throwing him the football. That year, Derek Carr came out in 2014. Derek Carr had 5,000-plus passing yards, 50 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions that season. So I think that's what we can look forward to. Numbers like that, which get your attention. I think if both those players replicated those 2013 numbers, Josh McDaniels would be happy, Devonta Adams and Derek Carr would be happy, and Raiders fans would be ecstatic in that division that we keep talking about. It's going to be so incredibly difficult. So I'm going back to 2013 Devonta Adams numbers that made him only a second-round pick somehow. If we go back and do that draft, he's the first overall pick potentially in a 2013 class that wasn't that deep. But that would be something, that'd be a little fun and nostalgic. Throw back to 2013 Fresno State.
Well, and when we saw the numbers, Ryan, when we saw, you had sent us the numbers and we were like, wait a minute, what? He's predicting these kind of numbers for Devonta Adams? Now it all makes sense. Now it all makes sense. All right, as mentioned, the Raiders have been very active this offseason. Plenty of candidates for, strange moves. So what is the offseason move in Vegas that made you scratch your head?
This is sort of an under-the-radar, low-key move, and at the end of the day, it's not that big a deal. Josh McDaniels, we know he has a lot of success with quarterbacks, and he's done a lot of moving and shaking with the quarterback position behind Derek Carr. Derek Carr is going to be the starter, no doubt about it. But they signed Nick Mullins. They traded for Jarrett Stidham, who was previously with New England. He was drafted there when Josh McDaniels was the OC there. They signed Garrett Gilbert, who they since cut. And they've signed Chase Garbers, the Cal rookie, who went undrafted. So they have some quarterbacks in the mix for the backup position. We'll see who wins the job. You would imagine Jarrett Stidham may have a leg up, even though Nick Mullins has played more regular season football with previous stops in San Francisco. But at the end of the day, if any of those guys are on the field, the issue is that Derek Carr probably is injured and can't play, and that's not what you want. But by and large, it's hard to be upset with anything the Raiders have done. They've gotten a lot better as a football team, not only with the players, but obviously with the coaching staff. But they have a little musical chairs going on with the backup quarterback position.
Yes, it's going to be a fight for the QB2 position with the Raiders. They didn't have a first-round pick or a second-round pick in the 2022 draft. In the third round, they took Memphis guard Dylan Parham. 4 of their 6 picks were trench players. With that in mind, give us a rookie who you think is going to make the biggest impact in year one.
Dylan Parham's going to be interesting. I think he'll get a chance to play early on because, again, you have to protect Derek Carr. But Zamir White is the guy I'm going to talk about, the running back out of Georgia. He split carries with James Cook. He's a completely different type player than James Cook, who went to the Bills as more of a pass catcher. Zamir White only had 9 receptions last year, but Josh McDaniels said, look, he has the ability to catch passes, but we like him as a physical between the tackles runner, and you see that here. He said he played against some of the best competition. Georgia was the national champions playing in the SEC, so clearly every week he saw a lot of great football players, many of whom are playing on Sundays. And the physicality, the ability to pick up the blitz, the level of competition, and he has pretty low mileage. Like I said, he was splitting carries with James Cook. I think he had fewer than 400 carries in his career at Georgia, and we've seen running backs approach 350 in the NFL over the course of a season. So he's a low mileage, physical running back that can take some of the pressure off Josh Jacobs, the former first-round pick, who the Raiders, by the way, chose not to pick up his 5th-year option.
Yeah, it's 160 carries, 856 yards, and 11 touchdowns for him last year. Okay, so what's your record prediction for the Raiders?
I like the Raiders in any other division. I'm predicting double-digit wins, and the fact that they did that last year is certainly noteworthy and perhaps should give me some indication of where this team's going this year. But I have them going 9-8. Just the division is so tough, and there are going to be a lot of tough wins to come across. So I think 9 wins is a good start. And is that the floor? No. I mean, we don't know what the injury situation is going to be, and I think every other team in that division is better. That said, I think the Raiders are better than they were a year ago, and they went to the playoffs and had a chance to make some noise in that Cincinnati game. They weren't able to do it. Obviously, Cincinnati went to the playoffs to represent for the AFC. So I'm going 9-8. I think they could win 10, 11 football games, especially if Derek Carr and Devonta Adams get that chemistry going, rekindle what they had at Fresno State early on. And Josh McDaniels does the things we saw him do successfully in New England and doesn't do the things that caused him to get fired in Denver over a decade ago. So 9-8 feels like the sweet spot. But if you told me they got hot and won 11 football games, I'd be excited for Raiders fans.
500 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, 250 to 1 to win the AFC are the Raiders as you take a look at their schedule. So Ryan Wilson saying perhaps a step back, but wouldn't be surprised if they get to double digits. Breaking down what could be one of the most competitive divisions in football. Ryan, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for hopping on with us. And for more on the NFL offseason, every move broken down in detail and what it all means, check out the Pick Six podcast. Ryan's on there, Will Brinson, John Breach. They're having fun and talking about what has been an incredible offseason in the National Football League. Download and follow the Pick Six podcast wherever you get your podcast audio. You can also watch the program on YouTube.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.